Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Quick Picks, where we break down all the fights on the Colby Covington vs Joaquin Buckley card. Let's dive right in, starting with Josefine Knutsson, Piera Rodriguez. My low confidence pick for this fight is Piera Rodriguez to hand Knutsson her first defeat. Why low confidence? This fight has many variables. I'm siding with Rodriguez due to her ability to control opponents against the cage and on the ground, areas where Knutsson has shown vulnerability. However, on the feet, Knutsson is the superior striker, and if this fight stays largely standing, she should win. Knutsson's recklessness also plays a factor. She tends to put herself in grappling situations she could avoid, often opting to match her opponent instead of escaping to reset. This, combined with her struggles against counterstrikers, plays into Rodriguez's strengths, as Rodriguez thrives where Knutsson is weakest. That said, questionable judging could influence the outcome. Even if Rodriguez dominates control time, the judges may favor Knutsson's striking, as we've seen in past decisions. A notable example is Ciryl Gane vs Alexander Volkov, where Gane was dominated in grappling yet still won due to biased scoring favoring aggression. Rodriguez's game plan will mirror Volkov's, focused on control and grappling but less aggressive on the feet, which could hurt her on the scorecards. This trend in judging likely stems from casual fans pushing for action over effectiveness and real MMA. In conclusion, my pick is Piera Rodriguez in a close fight, but I wouldn't be surprised if Knutsson edges out a controversial decision. If you're the type of fan who loves a good fist fight, then Davey Grant vs Ramon Taveras is the matchup for you. I anticipate a bloody brawl in this one, with Taveras coming out on top. Grant is a tough opponent, but this is a very winnable fight for Taveras. I expect him to capitalize on his ability to fight aggressively off his back foot, using his speed and youth to his advantage. At 38 years old, Davey Grant is no spring chicken, and as a bantamweight, the natural toll of age, wear and tear is evident every time he steps into the cage. We saw this decline in his fight against Daniel Marcos, where Grant didn't need to do much to lose. While Marcos won, he did absorb some heavy shots from Grant in that bout. Taveras, though lacking the same chin as Marcos, he compensates with excellent lateral movement, head movement, and sharp boxing, particularly off his back foot. Add that to his considerable punching power, and it's easy to see why I favor Taveras to stop Grant, who is past his physical prime. That said, Grant's toughness shouldn't be underestimated. I could see him surviving an onslaught and pushing this fight to a decision, as his constant aggressive style and respectable punching power does have the potential to keep Taveras honest. Although I don't see too many ways Grant can win, one potential opening for him lies in Taveras' tendency to drop his hands, especially on the move, a habit that got him tagged frequently in his fight against Suri Saidi. If Grant can exploit this, he could flip the script. Ultimately though, I'm picking Taveras to get his hand raised, whether by stoppage or decision. In my opinion, Jamey-Lyn Horth is overrated and unlikely to crack the top 10. Her last fight was a questionable decision win at home, and prior to that, she was thoroughly beaten by Hardy, a fighter I believe Miranda Maverick would also defeat. In contrast, Maverick has been steadily improving her skills, and this progress is evident every time she steps into the octagon. For this reason, I'm leaning towards Maverick to win this matchup. I expect Maverick to have the edge in grappling exchanges, controlling the positions and maintaining top control over Horth for most of the fight. While I anticipate this bout going to a decision, since Horth, despite not being particularly exceptional, does have a well-rounded game that will make her tough to finish, neither fighter is known for consistently securing finishes. When matched against each other, I believe this trend will hold. Ultimately, I predict Maverick will out-grapple Horth and create enough problems for her on the feet to leave no doubt about the winner. I expect a clear victory for Maverick on all three judges' scorecards. Miles Johns vs Felipe Lima promises to be a technical slugfest, but I believe Lima will come out on top. While both fighters show signs of fatigue in high-paced bouts, Lima's grit and ability to dig deep in tough moments give him the edge. He's a fighter who will chase a finish when needed, and his top-tier scrambles make him difficult to hold down, especially if his cardio holds up. Lima can fight hard for 3 rounds or more and has a second gear when needed. Johns, on the other hand, can also push through fatigue, relying on his striking power and wrestling. Though not the superior striker, his wrestling is a respectable threat to Lima. However, Lima's speed, kicks, and scrambling abilities will likely give Johns trouble, allowing him to control the fight and reverse any takedown attempts. I also see Lima potentially submitting Johns if he gives up his back, though I believe Johns will hold his own in grappling exchanges. Johns moving up to featherweight could improve his cardio, but Lima's relentless pace will likely keep him one step ahead. I predict Lima will finish the fight, though a dominant decision is also a possible outcome. Either way, I'm picking Lima to win. This fight between Sean Woodson and Fernando Padilla is a kickboxing match with a strong focus on boxing. Both fighters are tall with long reach and sharp striking, so expect a fast-paced contest with shots coming from all angles. I predict Woodson will control the fight and win by decision. Padilla's aggressive style and pressure make him a dangerous opponent. His counter-striking ability could catch Woodson coming in or out of the pocket. While Padilla's size makes him a threat, I believe Woodson's movement and speed will allow him to stay out of range, landing shots while avoiding Padilla's counters. Padilla's lack of defensive awareness could play into Woodson's hands, similar to how Kyle Nelson was able to frustrate him by timing his shots. Woodson's ability to use his footwork and capitalize on Padilla's overreaching strikes will frustrate Padilla. Though Padilla could potentially land a TKO with his pressure, I believe Woodson's skill and control will lead him to a clear decision victory. A finish isn't impossible, but I'm sticking with Woodson by decision. Joel Alvarez v Drakkar Klose, and this should be yet another gritty boxing match. Both great kickboxers with great boxing. I expect Klose to use a heavy boxing approach with the aim to close the distance and probably attempt to wrestle. Klose likes to use all his tools and is very experienced, so I don't expect him to try to stand with Alvarez for long periods. I do expect him to push forward for the most part, but I feel Alvarez has shown that he has answers for aggressive opponents aiming to stifle his range on them. I feel he will slow Klose down with knees, body kicks and teeps, and will also use slicing elbows in the clinch as we saw against Brenner, leading to a possible stoppage, but I feel Klose's durability and striking power should keep him around long enough for Alvarez to slow down. Once this happens, I expect Klose to get even with him and put a stronger pace on him. So should this fight reach the final round, I could see it being close and Drakkar pushing a pace, but I also feel even if this does happen and we don't get an early finish, Alvarez will kick into second gear and probably outworks Klose once this happens or hurts him. So I feel regardless of an early finish or decision victory, I have to lean towards Alvarez to get the job done. Although him gassing out early during a higher pace fight and being beat by Klose wouldn't surprise me much either, but Alvarez is the pick for this one. Although Azaitar has the advantages of youth and power, he doesn't bring much else to the table and tends to fight recklessly on the feet. His heavy reliance on power is a significant limitation, which is why I'm picking Johnson to win this fight. Despite being 38 years old, Johnson's hand speed remains impressive, his boxing is elite, and his takedown defense has improved dramatically in recent years. I believe Johnson has too many tools for Azaitar. He'll be able to stuff Azaitar's takedown attempts, outstrike him on the feet, and even secure takedowns of his own if needed. Azaitar's tendency to load up on shots and commit heavily to his strikes almost all the time will leave him open to counters, allowing Johnson to land his own offense while staying out of range of any critical strikes. In my view, Johnson will pick Azaitar apart and do enough to secure a clear unanimous decision victory. However, I wouldn't rule out a KO, given Azaitar's poor defensive habits. While I try to remain impartial when making my picks, there are some fights where I can't help but lean into a bias, and this is one of them. I believe Tokkos is the perfect sacrificial lamb for Navajo Stirling. Tokkos tends to leave himself open to be picked apart, shooting desperate takedowns that Stirling will likely defend with ease. I see Tokkos hanging around in the fight until he's ultimately finished. In my opinion, Stirling's style reminds me a lot of Israel Adesanya. He mixes up his strikes, uses feints more effectively than his opponents, and systematically breaks them down with precise, targeted attacks. I just don't think Tokkos has a plan to deal with this. He doesn't seem to bring deeply thought-out strategies into his fights, relying instead on conventional approaches. I expect he'll try to wrestle early on, but when that fails, he'll get picked apart, especially to the body and legs, until the inevitable headshot KO comes. In my prediction, Navajo Stirling finishes Tokkos within the distance. If not, he'll dominate his way to a clear 30-27 unanimous decision victory. While it seems like the UFC has matched Yanez with a less versatile opponent, I still believe Marcos is too well-rounded for him. Yanez appears to be competing in the wrong sport. He relies almost entirely on his boxing and doesn't seem to be developing other aspects of his game. He doesn't block leg kicks, even though his flat-footed, boxing-heavy style leaves him particularly vulnerable to them. He often exposes himself to counters, lacks wrestling and grappling, and doesn't utilize kicks. He's essentially a pure boxer competing against an MMA fighter in Marcos. For these reasons, I can't side with Yanez. While he's an elite-level boxer and might find a way to win using his hands alone, I think he'll struggle against someone as complete as Marcos. Marcos has the grappling, the ability to use kicks effectively, and the versatility to mix up his strikes, which will likely overwhelm Yanez. Although Yanez's punching power should keep Marcos cautious and may prevent a finish, I see Marcos controlling the fight and securing a clear, well-earned decision victory, allowing him to remain undefeated. The UFC has clearly set up this fight to help Petrino get back on track after his embarrassing display of low fight IQ against Smith, where he essentially let Smith lock in a guillotine without defending it. It was a foolish loss, highlighting that he's not the sharpest fighter, but what Petrino does have is power, as expected for someone his size, decent striking, solid cardio, and some basic striking IQ. This should be enough to get past his next opponent, Jacoby. Jacoby is a top-tier kickboxer, but that's where his strengths lie. He doesn't grapple unless he's hurt and forced to, and will use the clinch to stifle opponents' attacks when his movement alone isn't enough to evade strikes. However, he can be timed, and his chin is questionable. While this should make the fight challenging for Petrino, it's not difficult enough that he'll have to think too much. I expect Petrino to time Jacoby, hurt him, and then pressure him to finish the fight. If the pace slows, it could go to a decision, but Petrino should land enough damaging strikes to win, as that's often all it takes in today's scoring. Even if Jacoby has more control time and outstrikes Petrino, he could still lose a decision. I don't see Jacoby securing a finish, so I'm picking Petrino to win. Great matchmaking by the UFC with Manuel Cape taking on Bruno Silva. My prediction is that Cape will return to winning form, and the reasoning behind this is fairly straightforward if you've seen both fighters in action. Cape will be able to pick Silva apart on the feet, using his quick hands and reflexes to land strikes and get out of range before Silva's can land anything significant. Cape has a clear advantage in striking, and also in wrestling. Silva, like many Brazilians, lacks strong wrestling skills, so he'll struggle to take Cape down or take his back, where he can utilize his jiu-jitsu. I also don't see Silva being able to control Cape on the ground, making it a predominantly striking affair with minimal wrestling or grappling. Given that, I heavily favor Cape to outstrike Silva. While I expect a TKO finish, a dominant decision win wouldn't be surprising either. Cape is definitely the pick here. Cub Swanson versus Billy Quarantillo promises to be an exciting fight. If it lives up to expectations, it could be a high-level scrap rather than a wild brawl. I see Billy Q respecting Cub's power and avoiding a slugfest. Cub's pressure, boxing, and striking should give Billy Q trouble, as Billy has poor defense and often leaves himself open to strikes. Cub, being a skilled striker and boxer, will capitalize on this. However, I think Cub could either finish Billy Q early or gas himself out by pushing an uncomfortable pace. Like Cub, Billy Q likes to come forward and apply pressure, which should make for an intense, high-level brawl. If Cub doesn't finish Billy early, he might start to fade in the mid to late rounds, giving Billy Q an opportunity to take control. This could lead to a possible draw, though that would be unlikely. Once Cub begins to tire, he becomes a stationary target. I'm picking Billy Q to survive the early storm, maintain pressure on Cub, and capitalize as Cub fades. Billy will likely do enough to win on the judges' scorecards, with a small chance of securing a finish. Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley is a classic wrestling versus striking matchup. Buckley brings explosive power and is an exciting striker, while Colby's relentless pace and volume should prevent a slow, stagnant fight. However, it's unclear where Colby stands in his career. Despite his struggles in his last fight, it's important to consider his inactivity, having fought only once a year since 2019. At 36, it's uncertain how much gas he has left for top-tier competition. Buckley, meanwhile, is in his prime and continues to improve, becoming a greater threat to the top 5 with each fight. His game is evolving. He scored 8 takedowns in 2 recent bouts and may attempt a takedown against Colby to showcase his all-around skills. Though Buckley has been taken down by fighters like Vicente Luque and Alex Morono, he has shown the ability to quickly get back on his feet. This explosiveness will be key against Colby, who has struggled to maintain his usual pace in recent fights. Unlike Leon Edwards, Buckley throws more than 1 strike per round and possesses serious fight-ending power. Colby's last competitive fight was against Kamaru Usman, who neutralized his pace with a jab. I believe Buckley can impose his will, keep Colby on the back foot, and make it harder for him to set up takedowns. Once Colby is forced to fight at Buckley's pace, he'll struggle to find success. Buckley will either finish him or win a dominant unanimous decision. Either way, Buckley is my pick.